The Crooked Crown, Richard III. He seized England's throne, then vanished beneath its blood.
On August 22, 1485, amidst the marshy terrain of Bosworth Field, a 32-year-old monarch made a desperate gamble. Recognizing that his vanguard was collapsing and his supposed allies were betraying him, King Richard III identified the banner of his rival, Henry Tudor, across the battlefield. Instead of retreating, Richard led a ferocious cavalry charge of approximately 800 knights directly into the enemy lines. He personally killed Tudor's massive standard-bearer, Sir William Brandon, and came within sword's reach of Henry himself before being swarmed by Welsh pikemen. Richard was struck down, sustaining 11 distinct wounds to his skull, becoming the last English king to die in battle.
His naked body was slung over a horse, buried in an obscure friary, and lost to history until a stunning archaeological discovery in 2012 unearthed his skeleton beneath a municipal car park in Leicester.
Richard III was born Richard of York on October 2, 1452, at Fotheringhay Castle in Northamptonshire, England. He died on August 22, 1485, at the Battle of Bosworth. An Englishman of the royal house of Plantagenet, he was the last king of the Yorkist dynasty. His primary fields of influence were politics, military leadership, and legal administration. Richard III is considered profoundly influential because his short 26-month reign and violent death marked the definitive end of the Wars of the Roses, a brutal decades-long dynastic conflict. His demise directly facilitated the birth of the Tudor dynasty, permanently altering the trajectory of English history, while his controversial ascension cemented him as one of history's most debated figures. Richard was born into a realm tearing itself apart. England was engulfed in the Wars of the Roses, a bitter struggle for the throne between two rival branches of the royal family, the House of Lancaster and the House of York. Richard was the 11th of 12 children born to Richard, 3rd Duke of York, and Cecily Neville. His childhood was defined by terrifying instability. On December 30th, 1460, when Richard was just 8 years old, his father and his older brother Edmund were killed at the Battle of Wakefield. Their severed heads were spiked on the gates of York. For his safety, the young Richard was smuggled across the English Channel to the Duchy of Burgundy. This early exposure to sudden violence, betrayal, and political exile taught Richard that royal blood offered no protection, instilling in him a deep reliance on military strength and close familial loyalty. Richard's worldview was profoundly shaped by his eldest brother, who seized the throne as King Edward IV in 1461. Following Edward's coronation, Richard returned to England and was created Duke of Gloucester. Much of his adolescence was spent at Middleham Castle in Yorkshire, under the mentorship of his cousin, Richard Neville, 16th Earl of Warwick, known as the Kingmaker. Under Warwick's harsh but effective tutelage, Richard learned the grueling arts of medieval warfare and northern administration. During his early teenage years, Richard developed idiopathic adolescent scoliosis. Modern osteological analysis from his 2012 exhumation revealed a severe spinal curvature of 65 to 85 degrees. This condition meant his right shoulder was noticeably higher than his left, yet he underwent rigorous physical training to build the muscle mass necessary to wear heavy plate armor and wield a battle axe, overcoming a physical limitation that Tudor propagandists would later exaggerate into a monstrous hunchback. Richard's transition from a junior royal to a formidable public figure occurred on the battlefield. When the Earl of Warwick rebelled against Edward IV in 1470, the 18-year-old Richard remained fiercely loyal to his brother, fleeing with him into a brief exile. In 1471, Richard commanded the vanguard at the pivotal battles of Barnet and Tewkesbury. Despite his youth and spinal condition, his tactical brilliance and physical courage were instrumental in destroying the remaining Lancastrian forces. In recognition of his loyalty, Edward IV granted Richard vast estates in the north of England and appointed him Lord President of the Council of the North. For 12 years, Richard ruled northern England with remarkable efficiency.
He developed a reputation for fairness, successfully defending the Scottish border, capturing the town of Berwick in 1482, and earning the deep, enduring loyalty of the northern nobility.
Richard's life irrevocably changed on April 9, 1483, when Edward IV died unexpectedly at the age of 40. Edward's heir was his 12-year-old son, Edward V. In his will, the late king named the 30-year-old Richard as Lord Protector of the realm. However, a vicious power struggle immediately erupted between Richard and the wealthy, ambitious family of the Dowager Queen, the Woodvilles, who sought to control the young king. On April 30, 1483, Richard intercepted the young Edward V's royal entourage at Northampton, arresting the king's maternal uncle, Anthony Woodville. Richard subsequently escorted his nephew to the Tower of London, then a traditional royal residence prior to coronation. This decisive, bloodless coup paralyzed the Woodville faction and placed Richard in absolute control of the government, marking his transformation from a loyal regional commander into the central power of the English state. Richard's path to the throne and subsequent reign were rapid and highly controversial. June 22, 1483, a public sermon was preached at St. Paul's Cross, alleging that Edward IV's marriage to Elizabeth Woodville was invalid due to a pre-contract, rendering Edward V and his 9-year-old brother, Richard of Shrewsbury, illegitimate. June 25, 1483, an Assembly of Lords and Commons presented Richard with a petition, later enacted as Titulus Regius, urging him to take the throne. July 6, 1483, Richard and his wife, Anne Neville, were crowned King and Queen of England at Westminster Abbey. October 1483, Richard swiftly crushed a major rebellion led by his former ally, the Duke of Buckingham. January 1484, Richard convened his only parliament, passing 33 progressive legal statutes. April 1484, his only legitimate son and heir, 10-year-old Edward of Middleham, died suddenly, politically destabilizing the regime. August 22, 1485, Richard was defeated and killed by Henry Tudor at the Battle of Bosworth Field. Richard III is most famous for the darkest mystery of his reign, the disappearance of his nephews, the princes in the Tower. Following his coronation in July 1483, the 12-year-old and 9-year-old boys were never seen in public again. While people paid attention to his competent administration, the suspected murder of the princes cast a permanent, horrifying shadow over his reputation. This mystery provided the perfect material for later Tudor historians, most notably Sir Thomas More, to craft a narrative of a ruthless, deformed usurper. This historical propaganda was subsequently immortalized in 1592 or 1593 by William Shakespeare in the play Richard III. Because of Shakespeare's theatrical genius, Richard's name became internationally recognized, not for his real-life legislative achievements, but as the ultimate archetype of a Machiavellian villain. As a human being, Richard was driven by a complex mix of intense religious piety, deep-seated anxiety, and a rigid sense of justice. He was famously austere compared to the hedonistic court of his brother, Edward IV. Richard was motivated by a desire for security in an age where royal bloodlines were routinely exterminated. His working style was highly administrative. He read documents thoroughly and personally intervened in legal disputes to assist commoners. His greatest strength was his military courage and his ability to inspire loyalty in the north. However, his profound weakness was his paranoia and inability to build consensus among the southern nobility. When cornered, he reacted with rapid, ruthless preemptive strikes, as seen when he ordered the summary execution of Lord Hastings in June 1483 on sheer suspicion of treason. He believed deeply in the rule of law, yet paradoxically subverted the kingdom's succession to secure his own life.
Richard III's greatest political failure was his inability to unify the English nobility behind his usurpation. The disappearance of the princes in the Tower was a catastrophic public relations disaster that alienated his most loyal Yorkist supporters, many of whom subsequently defected to Henry Tudor. Furthermore, Richard's aggressive redistribution of southern estates to his loyal northern allies created intense regional resentment. Historians frequently criticize his fatal miscalculation at Bosworth, where he trusted powerful nobles like the Stanley family, who stood by and ultimately turned against him during the battle. Ethically, contemporaries and modern critics alike debate his complicity in the prince's deaths. While no direct evidence of a murder order exists, historians agree that as the boys were under his strict custody, Richard bore ultimate responsibility for their fate, a controversy that irreparably doomed his reign. Despite reigning for only 777 days, Richard III had a significant impact on English law and society. During his 1484 Parliament, he introduced profound judicial reforms that outlasted his dynasty. He established a system of bail, allowing suspected felons to remain free and protect their property before trial. He instituted the Court of Requests, enabling poor citizens who could not afford legal representation to be heard. Crucially, he ordered that the kingdom's laws be translated from traditional French and Latin into English, making the legal system accessible to commoners for the first time. Long-term, his catastrophic defeat at Bosworth ended the 331-year rule of the Plantagenet dynasty. This ushered in the Tudor era, fundamentally shifting England's political landscape, accelerating the centralization of royal power and laying the groundwork for the English Reformation. Today, Richard III's legacy is sharply divided between historical fact, theatrical mythology, and modern scientific discovery. For 500 years, he was almost universally viewed as a tyrannical monster, heavily influenced by Shakespeare's famous but fictitious cry, a horse, my kingdom for a horse." However, the modern era has seen a fierce re-evaluation. The Richard III Society, founded in 1924, and popular literature like Josephine Tey's 1951 novel, The Daughter of Time, have worked tirelessly to clear his name, portraying him as a capable ruler victimized by Tudor propaganda. This debate reached a global crescendo in 2012 when a team from the University of Leicester discovered his battle-scarred skeleton. The scientific confirmation of his scoliosis and the brutal nature of his death humanized the long-vilified king. In March 2015, in a globally televised ceremony, his remains were reinterred with full royal honors at Leicester Cathedral, marking a profound shift in his historical image. The life of Richard III is a gripping testament to the fragility of power and the immense weight of historical memory. His rapid ascent and devastating fall reveal how ambition, when fueled by the trauma of a violent age, can drive a highly capable and loyal administrator to commit acts that destroy his own legitimacy. Richard was neither the absolute monster of Tudor myth, nor the flawless victim of modern romanticism. He was a brilliant, deeply flawed pragmatist, trapped in an unforgiving dynastic machine. His reign proves that legislative brilliance and personal courage are rarely enough to overcome the taint of suspected tyranny. Ultimately, Richard III stands as history's most profound reminder that while victors may write the history books, truth, even buried naked beneath the concrete of a modern city, can eventually rise to challenge the narratives of kings.